After 15 years, my wife chose her boss over me, then asked, "I want an open marriage." I filed for divorce and got the house and the kids. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 15 years, and I assumed we had a good relationship. We have 2 children, Lily, 13, and Ethan, 10. I truly believed we were happy together. Sarah works at a corporation and has been there for almost 3 years. Her supervisor, Mark, is a guy in his early 40s who is also married and has children. About 2 weeks ago, Sarah came home from work acting strangely, and I could tell she was thinking about something, but I didn't want to push her. She kept checking her phone more than usual and smiling at it, which made me suspect, as if she was sharing a private joke with someone. I asked her if everything was all right, and she claimed she was just weary from work, but her voice had an anxious edge to it that I hadn't heard before. Last Tuesday, after the kids had gone to bed, she sat me down in our living room and said she needed to talk about something important. My first assumption was that someone had died or that she was ill, since her hands were shaking and she kept fidgeting with her wedding band. She took a long breath and stated she has been thinking about our marriage and how we have grown apart, and she would like us to consider expanding our connection. I was absolutely surprised, and my mind went blank for a second. I asked her what she meant by that, and she replied that she has formed affections for someone else and believes we should pursue other relationships while married. The way she stated someone else indicated that she already had a specific person in mind, and my thoughts instantly turned to her employer, given how much she'd been talking about him recently. When I asked her directly whether it was her employer, Mark, she became defensive and said, "It doesn't matter who it is. It's about our marriage and making sure we're both satisfied." But her face turned red, and she couldn't look me in the eyes, so I knew everything I needed to know. I told her that I didn't want to open our marriage, and that if she wanted to be with someone else, we should divorce. She quickly backtracked and stated that she does not want a divorce, that she loves me, and that she wants our family to be together. However, she stated that she cannot ignore her sentiments. The entire time she's talking, I'm thinking about how it sounds like she's already considered every possibility and determined that this is the best way to have her cake and eat it too. She continued stressing that we could set boundaries and restrictions, and that many couples make this work. But all I could think about was how my children would react if they discovered their mother was dating another guy while still married to their father. I asked her if she had already had physical contact with this individual, and she said she hadn't. But the way she paused before responding made me doubt her completely. The chat lasted about 2 hours, and by the conclusion I was absolutely exhausted and disoriented. She was crying, saying she never meant for this to happen and that all she wanted was for us both to be happy. But I kept thinking about how this whole thing was actually just her asking for my permission to cheat without consequences. I told her I needed time to think, and she said she understood. But then she held me and said that she hopes I will think about it because she believes it could work. That night, I couldn't sleep and kept staring at the ceiling, thinking over our entire relationship and wondering if there were any warning signs I was missing. The next morning, she pretended nothing had occurred and was preparing breakfast for the kids while discussing their school projects, as if we hadn't just had the most terrible talk of our marriage. I couldn't concentrate all day at work, and my coworker asked if I was okay because I looked terrible. I wanted to tell someone what was going on, but I felt embarrassed and guilty, as if I wasn't enough for my wife or had failed as a husband in some way. When I arrived home that evening, Sarah had prepared my favorite dinner and was being too affectionate, caressing my arm while she spoke and laughed at things that weren't even funny. I could see she was attempting to flatter me, and it felt so manipulative and phony that I wanted to call her out right away. During dinner, Lily inquired as to why Mom appeared so cheerful, and Sarah replied that she was simply having a nice day at work, which made me want to scream, because I knew exactly why she was having a good day. After the kids returned to their rooms, she brought up the topic again, saying she had been thinking about it all day and believes it will strengthen our marriage. She had all these articles about successful open marriages on her phone, and she kept reading me statistics about how many couples try it and come out happier. But as she's talking, all I can think about is how she's already emotionally cheating on me and now wants my permission to make it physical. I ultimately told her that I would not consent to an open marriage, and that if she wanted to pursue someone else, we would have to separate. She burst into tears again, accusing me of being closed-minded and failing to consider alternatives. Then she mentioned something that really struck me. She assumed I'd be more tolerant because I'd always been supportive of her profession and goals. The way she tried to justify wanting to sleep with her boss as a career goal made me realize that she was either absolutely crazy or thought I was stupid. When I told her I was going to stay in an XYZ hotel about 20 minutes away for a few days to clear my mind, she panicked and said it was an overreaction and we should keep talking about it. But I was done talking, since every word she said confirmed that she had already decided what she wanted to do. I packed a bag while she followed me around the house, pleading with me not to leave and insisting that we could work this out if I only gave her a chance to explain more clearly. She said that she still loved me and that nothing had changed between us, but I was thinking about how you wouldn't ask to sleep with other people if you truly loved your spouse. The kids were upstairs doing homework and had no idea their parents' marriage was disintegrating right beneath them. I kissed them goodnight and told them I had to leave town for work for a few days, which hurt, since I despise lying to kids. But I couldn't tell them the truth. Lily asked if everything was okay because mom wasn't happy, and I just responded that mom was tired and that everything will be okay, despite the fact that I had no idea if things would ever be fine again. I drove to a hotel and checked in, but the entire time I felt like I was in a dream. I sat on the bed in this hotel room trying to understand what had just occurred to my wife and family, and I kept returning to the same question: how long had this been going on without my knowledge? About an hour after I checked in, there was a knock on my door, and I knew it was Sarah before I peered through the peephole. She was standing there crying, her makeup smudged, and she told me we needed to talk and that I couldn't just run away. I let her in because I didn't want to start a fight in the hallway, but I quickly regretted it because she started into a long speech about how she'd made a mistake bringing this up and how she didn't truly want an open marriage. But then she said she couldn't promise that her feelings for this other person would go away, and that perhaps we could reach an agreement that worked for both of us. I asked her what kind of compromise she had in mind, and she claimed she could have an emotional relationship with him while remaining physically faithful to me, which made me laugh out loud because it was such a stupid proposal. I explained to her that she was already having an emotional affair and that asking for permission to continue it was not a compromise at all. She became enraged and claimed that I was being unjust and that she had been honest with me about her feelings rather than cheating as many others would do. The fact that she seemed to believe she deserved credit for informing me she wanted to cheat rather than doing it behind my back demonstrated how far gone she was already. We argued for another hour, and she kept trying new angles to persuade me that this might work, but each proposal made it clear that she'd already decided she wanted to be with this guy and was simply looking for a method to do so without disrupting her comfortable life with me. Finally, I told her she needed to leave and that I would call her tomorrow to discuss the next steps. She cried and begged, saying she couldn't lose me or the kids, but when I asked if she was willing to cut off all non-work contact with her boss and transfer to a different department, she said it wasn't fair and she shouldn't have to give up her career. That's when I knew she'd already chosen him over our marriage, and the rest was just her trying to have it both ways. I'm writing this from my hotel room since I can't sleep and have no idea what to do next. Part of me wants to fight for our marriage, but another part of me believes it's already over, and I'm simply postponing the inevitable. I keep worrying about my children and how this will affect them, and whether I should attempt to make it work for their benefit. But I also don't want kids to grow up believing that this type of connection is normal or healthy. I think I'm just asking for advice from others who have been through similar experiences or who can help me understand this issue more clearly. Right now, I feel like my entire life has been turned upside down and I'm not sure which way is up. Update 1 to 2 months later. I thought I'd give everyone an update on what has happened since my original post. Thank you to everyone who left comments and messaged me to show their support. It was extremely helpful during the most difficult 2 months of my life. After I first posted, I stayed at that motel for a week while Sarah and I decided what to do. We had several more conversations, and she insisted on saving our marriage, but every time I mentioned cutting off communication with Mark, she found reasons why it wasn't practical or fair. She claimed they worked too closely together, that it would be evident to everyone if she abruptly began avoiding him, and that she couldn't endanger her job over this. I told her that she should have thought about it before developing feelings for her married employer, but she said I was being harsh and that people can't control who they feel for. I eventually came back home because I miss my children and because staying in a hotel permanently wasn't viable, but I made it obvious to Sarah that we were separated, although living in the same house. We explained to the kids that mom and dad were going through a tough period, but that we both loved them very much, and I could see how confused and afraid they were, even though they didn't really grasp what was going on. Sarah continued to attempt to seem normal around the kids, suggesting family activities like movie nights or going out to eat, but everything felt forced and uncomfortable. I couldn't stop myself from continually scrutinizing her for clues that she was still in communication with Mark, even though I despised how paranoid and suspicious I had become. She would still check her phone incessantly and accept conversations in private, and when I approached her about it, she said it was all work, but her defensive tone told me differently. Sarah came home from work around 3 weeks ago, visibly distraught, and I knew something had happened. She was quiet at dinner and kept looking at me as if she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out where to begin. After the kids went to bed, she asked if we could talk, and my initial assumption was that Mark had left his wife for her and she was going to file for divorce. Instead, she informed me that she had been dismissed from her work, and my brain initially struggled to absorb what she was saying. When I asked her what happened, she burst into tears and explained that she had made a mistake and that Mark had reported her to HR for inappropriate behavior. She claimed she tried to talk to him about their relationship, but he utterly rejected her, stating that he was dedicated to his marriage and that what she was suggesting was unacceptable. It just meant that Mark was not interested in her, and she had essentially ruined our marriage for someone who didn't even want her. She'd abandoned our 15-year marriage for a fantasy that was never genuine in the first place. I asked her exactly what she'd said or done to get fired, and she was vague. But from what I could tell, she'd basically admitted her feelings to him and proposed they start a relationship. She continued screaming that she had made a terrible mistake and that she now realizes that what we have is more important than some dumb crush. But I couldn't get past the reality that she was willing to destroy our entire family for a man who was never available or interested. The next few weeks have been really difficult because Sarah is coping with unemployment and rejection, and she appears to want me to console her and support her through this crisis that she manufactured herself. She keeps repeating things like she can't believe she was so stupid and that she should have appreciated what she had with me, but every time she talks about it, I can tell she's more concerned about Mark rejecting her than about the possibility of losing our marriage. What's been particularly painful is that she's been calling me selfish for not being more supportive during this difficult time. Last week, I went on a skiing trip with my brother that we had planned months in advance, and when I returned, Sarah was upset, saying she couldn't believe I had abandoned her when she needed me most. She stated it was cruel of me to go have fun while she was struggling with the aftermath of losing her job, and that a good husband would have canceled his trip to be there for his wife. I informed her that I wasn't her husband in any meaningful way anymore, because she'd made it clear that she wanted to be with someone else, and that I wasn't responsible for soothing her through the consequences of her own decisions. But she stated it was exactly the type of selfish thinking that had led her to seek emotional connection elsewhere in the first place, which enraged me so much that I had to leave the room before saying anything I'd regret. The saddest aspect is that our children are becoming involved in ways that make me feel bad. Lily asked me the other day why I wasn't being kinder to Mom, who was obviously upset about losing her job, and Ethan has been asking if we're getting divorced because a kid at school said his parents argued a lot before they separated. Sarah has been crying in front of them more frequently, and I can see how much it is impacting them, and I know they believe I am being unkind to their mother during this difficult time. Lily confronted me yesterday and informed me that her mother told her she lost her job due to office politics, that she needs our help right now, and that she doesn't understand why I'm being so cold toward her. I wanted to tell Lily the truth about why her mother lost her job, but I knew it would be unjust to place that responsibility on a 13-year-old girl. So I just said that adult relationships can be complicated at times and I'm doing my best to figure them out. But then Lily suggested that I try harder because Mom is truly sorry for whatever she's done wrong and that everyone deserves another chance. Hearing my daughter defend her mother and effectively ask me to forgive her for attempting to cheat on me with her boss was one of the most heartbreaking moments of the entire journey. I know Lily has no idea what she's asking me to forgive, but it feels like everyone wants me to simply get over it and move on. Sarah has started talking about going to marriage therapy and says she's willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship, but I have the impression she's only saying this since her plan to be with Mark failed so horribly. If he had been interested in her, I am confident she would have requested a divorce without hesitation, and now she wants me to pretend that none of this occurred since her backup plan is to stay with me. I've been considering filing for divorce, but I'm hesitant because of how it would affect the children. My brother believes I should divorce her because what she did was unforgivable regardless of whether she physically cheated or not, whilst my sister believes I should seek counseling for the sake of the children. I honestly don't know what the appropriate response is, and I feel like I'm caught in a terrible limbo where I can't move forward but also can't go back to the way things were. I know I have to make a decision soon since this uncertainty is unfair to everyone. I only wish I knew how to identify the difference between genuine remorse and regret that her plan did not come out as expected. Update: 2 to 3 months later. I've been putting off writing this post because I knew it would make everything seem more real, but I believe I owe it to everyone who has been following my story to let you know what's going on. This community's support has meant more to me than you can imagine, especially when I felt like I was going mad or being ridiculous. After my last update, I spent a lot of time reflecting on the sort of life I wanted for myself and my children, and I concluded that I couldn't continue living in this condition of uncertainty and animosity. Sarah continued to push for marriage therapy and discuss how we could rebuild our connection better than before, but each chat felt like she was attempting to persuade me to forget about something I'll never forget. The breaking point came about a month ago when I discovered that Sarah had maintained communication with Mark even after being fired. I discovered this absolutely by mistake when her laptop was open on the kitchen counter and a notification appeared from a chat program I didn't recognize. I realized right away that this was bad news because she would not be utilizing another app to communicate with her sister or friends. When I opened it, I saw weeks of texts between her and Mark. I photographed it on my phone in case it would be useful in future divorce processes. Most of the messages were her apologizing for what happened at work and attempting to persuade him that what she felt was genuine and worth pursuing, while he continually told her to stop contacting him and that he was uninterested. But what really got me was that she was still chasing him while telling me that she wanted to save our marriage and that he no longer meant anything to her. I confronted her about it that night, and she initially denied it, but when I showed her the messages, she broke down and revealed that she had been attempting to keep some sort of connection with him. She claimed she knew it was terrible, but she couldn't just turn off her emotions, and she hoped that if she could only achieve closure with him, she'd be able to fully commit to our marriage again. That's when I knew our marriage was over, because, despite losing her job and facing the potential of divorce, she was still more interested in pursuing Mark than in making amends with me. I told her I was done trying to make things work and that I was going to file for divorce. The look of surprise on her face told me she truly believed I would just keep waiting around endlessly while she figured out her feelings. Last week, I finally met with a divorce attorney and began the paperwork, and I informed Sarah in person yesterday that I had officially filed divorce proceedings. I waited till the kids were at school because I knew she'd respond emotionally and didn't want them to see it. When I told her, she burst into tears and begged me to reconsider, claiming she'd do anything to salvage our marriage, and that she'd been an idiot for throwing away what we had. She kept insisting that Mark meant nothing to her, that she'd been confused and going through a midlife crisis, but that she realized now that I was the one man she wanted to be with. What hurt my heart was when she asked me what she was going to tell the kids about why their family was disintegrating, and I could see true fear in her eyes at having to explain this to Lily and Ethan. I assured her that we would figure out how to tell them jointly, but that we would not lie to them about why we were divorcing, even if we didn't tell them everything. She begged me to consider how this would affect the children and suggested that we try separating for a period instead of going straight to divorce, but I told her that we had been separated for months and that nothing had changed except that she had continued to lie to me. I told her that I wanted our children to see what a healthy relationship looks like and that remaining in a marriage in which one person attempted to cheat was not setting a good example for them. The most difficult part of the meeting was when she asked if there was anything she could do to change my decision, and I could see genuine desperation in her eyes. For a brief moment, I hesitated because I could see the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago beneath all the lies and deception. I told her that the person I married would never have done the things she had done in the last few months, and that I had no idea who she was anymore. But I knew she wasn't someone I could trust with my heart or my future. She cried even harder, explaining that individuals make mistakes and that marriage is supposed to be about forgiving and working through difficult times together. but I explained that what she had done was not a mistake, but rather a sequence of purposeful decisions that revealed her true objectives. The chat lasted about 3 hours, and by the conclusion, we were both emotionally weary. She asked if I felt we could reconcile in the future when she'd had time to work on herself and demonstrate that she had changed, but I told her honestly that I couldn't see myself ever trusting her again and that I wanted to focus on moving forward rather than hoping for something that would most likely never happen. We haven't told the kids about the divorce yet because we're still figuring out how to do it properly, and Sarah keeps hoping that if we wait a little longer I'll change my mind. But I know that prolonging the topic would only make matters worse for everyone, and Lily and Ethan need to know what's going on with their family. Even if the truth is sad and complicated, I know the next 6 months will be extremely challenging. As we navigate the divorce process, determine custody arrangements, and learn how to co-parent properly, I also feel like I'm finally regaining control of my life rather than simply responding to the next disaster Sarah causes. My lawyer thinks the divorce should be quite simple because we agree on most of the important issues, but I realize that could change if Sarah decides to fight it. The kids will struggle with this, and I'm sorry that they will be damaged by their mother's decisions. However, I believe they will be better off in the long term if they witness their parents in good relationships rather than watching us pretend that our current situation is normal or sustainable. I intend to begin therapy to help me process everything that has happened and to ensure that I am managing the divorce and co-parenting in the best way possible. I never imagined myself as a 38-year-old divorced father, but I'm trying to focus on creating a decent life for myself and my children rather than worrying about how things have changed from what I expected. Thank you again to everyone who has provided me support and advice during this extremely tough period in my life. Final update. Several months later, wanted to post one final update to wrap up this chapter of my life because so many of you have been following along and given support during this struggle. It has been over 8 months since my original post and 6 months since I filed for divorce, and I am pleased to report that the divorce was finally finalized last week. The process proved to be more challenging than my lawyer had anticipated, because Sarah went through several stages of back and forth, even after we agreed, before attempting to oppose various aspects of the divorce. However, we eventually came to an agreement that worked for everyone concerned. We are splitting custody of Lily and Ethan, with them staying with me during the week and spending weekends with Sarah, which appears to be working well for the kids so far. Telling the kids about the divorce was one of the most difficult discussions I've ever had, but we decided to be honest with them about their mother's emotions for someone else and our inability to resolve our differences. Lily took it hard at first and blamed me for not being willing to forgive her mother, but she eventually realized that some things cannot be mended just by saying sorry. Ethan was more puzzled than anything else, and he kept asking if there was anything he could do to rekindle mom and dad's love, which hurt my heart. But both kids have been seeing a counselor who specializes in helping children cope with divorce, and they appear to be adjusting better than I expected, considering how much their lives have been flipped upside down. Sarah struggled emotionally and financially during the divorce, and she tried to use the kids to guilt me into reconsidering. She would tell them how unhappy she was living alone in her apartment or how much she missed being part of a family. And for a while, Lily would ask me virtually every day if we could get back together someday. I had to have some painful conversations with both kids about how sometimes parents make decisions that harm their families, and how, despite how much mom and dad love them, we can't be married to each other anymore. I attempted to be honest without saying anything that might jeopardize their connection with their mother, which was a tricky balance that I'm still working to maintain. The entire procedure felt like watching Sarah spiral for a few months after her divorce was finalized. She had problems finding a new job after being fired from her prior employer, and I believe the reality of losing both Mark and our marriage hit her harder than she anticipated. She contacted me several times, crying and asking if we could try again, and I had to keep reminding her that too much had transpired for us to return to the way things were. Sarah acquired a new job about 3 months ago and appears to be doing better professionally and personally. She's been more stable during our encounters and has stopped mentioning reconciliation, making co-parenting considerably simpler for everyone involved. The kids have adapted to our new routine, and while they still express regret that our family is different today, they appear to be prospering in their own ways. As for me, I've been working on reconstructing my life and discovering who I am as a single father. I started going to therapy approximately 4 months ago, and it has been quite helpful in processing everything that has happened and learning to trust my own judgment again. I realized I'd spent so much time worrying about whether I was being rational or fair that I'd lost sight of the fact that Sarah's behavior was truly terrible, regardless of her intentions. I'm not dating anyone right now because I want to focus on my children and heal from everything that occurred. But I'm hopeful that I'll find love again someday with someone who genuinely wants to be with me. Thank you to everyone who followed my journey and gave advice and support throughout the worst time in my life. I know there are other people going through similar situations who may be reading this, and I want them to know that it is possible to get through something like this and come out stronger on the other side, even if it appears impossible at the time.